A reading from the first book of Kings. The Queen of Sheba, having heard of Solomon's fame, came to test him with subtle questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a very numerous retinue and with camels bearing spices, a large amount of gold, and precious stones. She came to Solomon and questioned him on every subject in which she was interested. King Solomon explained everything she asked about, and there remained nothing hidden from him that he could not explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba witnessed Solomon's great wisdom, the palace he had built, the food at his table, the seating of his ministers, the attendance and garb of his waiters, his banquet service, and the burnt offerings he offered in the temple of the Lord, she was breathless. "The report I heard in my country about your deeds and your wisdom is true," she told the king, "though I did not believe the report until I came and saw with my own eyes. I have discovered that they were not telling me half. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the report I heard. Blessed are your men, blessed these servants of yours who stand before you always and listen to your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, whom it has pleased to place you on the throne of Israel. In his enduring love for Israel, the Lord has made you king to carry out judgment and justice." Then she gave the king 120 gold talents, a very large quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again did anyone bring such an abundance of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The word of the Lord. The wisdom of the just murmurs wisdom. The wisdom of the just murmurs wisdom. Commit to the Lord your way. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring justice dawn for you like the light. Bright as the noonday shall be your vindication. The mouth of the just murmurs wisdom. The mouth of the just man tells of wisdom, and his tongue utters what is right. The law of his God is in his heart, and his steps do not falter. The mouth of the just murmurs wisdom. The salvation of the just is from the Lord. He is their refuge in times of distress, and the Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them, because they take refuge in him. The mouth of the just murmurs wisdom.
Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Your word, O Lord, is truth. Consecrate us in the truth. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus summoned the crowd again and said to them, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. Nothing that enters one from outside can defile that person, but the things that come out from within are what defile." When he got home away from the crowd, his disciples questioned him about the parable. He said to them, "Are even you likewise without understanding? Do you not realize that everything that goes into a person from outside cannot defile, since it enters into not the heart but the stomach, and passes out into the latrine? Thus he declared all foods clean. But what comes out of the man, that is what defiles him. From within the man, from his heart, come evil thoughts, unchastity, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, licentiousness, envy, blasphemy, arrogance, folly. All these evils come from within, and they defile." The Gospel of the Lord. Today's first reading, we heard about the visit of the Queen of Sheba, who came and heard of Solomon's wisdom, and so she came to test him. I just wanted to make some brief comments this morning about something that I think is very much forgotten in our culture today, and that is the meaning and value of wisdom. Solomon, famously, God appeared to him in a dream at the beginning of the first book of Kings and asked Solomon and basically told him that he would give him whatever he wanted. And Solomon, rather than asking for riches or fame or many wives or anything like that, he asked for wisdom. Because he asked for wisdom, God gave him wisdom and also many other great things. So what is wisdom? I think this is the crucial question that is much forgotten in our culture today. What does it mean to be wise? In the olden days, we used to have something called philosophy, which is literally the Greek word for the love of wisdom. And so philosophy was seen as this love of wisdom, and philosophy used to be seen as something very important in our culture. But if you take a look at our schools and universities today, philosophy seems like a useless discipline. Many people can go through years and years of education and schooling and even college and university without having a single class in philosophy, studying the love of wisdom. And the reason why that is because we have forgotten what wisdom is, and we have forgotten the value of wisdom. What wisdom essentially is, according to the philosophers and according to many great thinkers in church history, John Paul II famously wrote an encyclical called Faith and Reason, which was all about the study of wisdom. He did that earlier on in his pontificate. And basically what wisdom means is it's the ability to see the whole. Wisdom means that you know how to put different pieces together. In terms of education, it means that you know how to put different disciplines in their proper order and structure and hierarchy. Wisdom is extremely important. Wisdom is about life's most important and essential questions. When I say that our culture today has forgotten the value of wisdom, I mean in terms of education, for one thing, but also in terms of our culture's understandings. In our culture today, there is a tendency to ignore wisdom, the ability to see the whole, and there's a temptation to take individual disciplines of knowledge and make them the highest form of knowledge rather than wisdom. I noticed this very clearly in October. We were having a confirmation class, and Jenny Zahner was explaining this to the students, what philosophy was and how it was different from different disciplines of knowledge. And she gave the example of one of the things that we've experienced over the last 2 years. We've experienced a crisis of philosophy and science, right? In terms of the great COVID epidemic, what is the thing that you constantly hear people saying? We just need to follow the science. Right? People are acting as if science is the highest form of knowledge, but it's not. Science can answer lots of different questions. It can tell us how the world works. It can tell us what things are made of, but it doesn't tell us why things are here or how we should use different things. Science can teach us about the cause of COVID, but it can't tell us what we're supposed to do about COVID. So we've all experienced that in our culture recently. But it's not just science. It can happen the same way with technology. I think even in the 20th century, there was a great temptation to place psychology above all of the other sciences. Right? That's why in the church, for example, there were so many people who were trying to make the church change her moral teachings because different psychologists were saying that those teachings were inhumane. Right? This temptation to put psychology over and above everything else. In many different ways in our culture, we have forgotten the need for wisdom, higher and above all these different individual realms of knowledge. So I just want to point that out to us today for our own reflection. We would do well to have more people studying philosophy, studying the great thinkers, life's great questions. The last thing I just want to comment on in this reading this morning is the sort of mysterious aspect about this. something that the church fathers commented on very often after the onslaught of Islam was that the Queen of Sheba is kind of like a foreshadowing of what we hope will one day happen with Islam. The Queen of Sheba is a very famous person in the Quran. And so it's one of those times in the Old Testament in salvation history where the Bible and the Quran meet. And we have this woman who seeks out the wisdom of Solomon. Many church fathers saw her as a prefiguration of what they hoped would one day happen with Islam, that Islam would one day return to the one true faith of Christianity and the God of wisdom. You might remember Pope Benedict a number of years ago, he gave a very controversial speech called the Regensburg Address. And he was kind of speaking about this. He was commenting on the history of philosophy in terms of Christianity and Islam. And he was pointing out that unfortunately in our modern day, Islamic philosophy and theology has been dominated by unintelligent thinkers. In other words, we as Christians and as Catholics, we believe that God is a God of reason. But many Muslim philosophers and theologians see God as merely a God who does whatever he wants. He doesn't need to be reasonable. He doesn't need to be intelligent. He just does whatever he wills. Pope Benedict famously gave this address criticizing that aspect of Muslim tradition, and famously it caused a huge outcry. But the same thing remains for us today. It's very important for us to remember as Christians and as Catholics that our God is not simply a God who does whatever he wills. He is a God who is true and reasonable and intelligent, and all of his teachings and all of his commandments are true wisdom, are truly infused with the wisdom of truth.